Thanks for joining us, everyone. This is Samantha with the ClickTools Marketing Department, and I'd like to welcome you to today's event with Forrester, which is the Customer Experience Landscape for 2016, Trends, Roadblocks, and Survival Advice. We thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy day to participate. Before I do hand things over to Rick, I would like to really briefly introduce ClickTools, who we are and what we do for those of you who are not familiar with our brand. First of all, as a company, we have been around since 2001, and we were really true pioneers in the customer feedback space. We were the first survey solution on the Salesforce App Exchange, and literally from day one, we have enabled companies to integrate customer feedback into CRM. Now, in the fall of 2014, we were acquired by Callidus Cloud, and as many of you know, Callidus Cloud is the leading provider of sales and marketing effectiveness software. And now, as a member of the Callidus Cloud family, we serve literally hundreds and hundreds of customers across various industries, as you can see here from some of the very impressive logos before you. And Rick, if you jump to the next slide, please. ClickTools, the software solution, very briefly, as almost all of you on today's call know, we are the leading enterprise feedback solution for business and have been for years, of course. Companies use ClickTools to improve customer experience, customer engagement, employee engagement across the organization using surveys, predominantly, call scripts, and web forms of all different types. And some of the benefits of doing so are a deeper understanding of customers, a much clearer customer-centric focus as an organization, and ultimately the ability to drive improvements and profits much more consistently across the organization as well. So it's a very high level overview of the ClickTools solution. And with that, I'd like to hand things over to Rick Parrish. Rick is a senior analyst in the customer experience discipline with Forrester. And Rick, I hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks very much, and thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. As you know, as you can see here, we're going to talk about what the CX landscape looks like in 2016. We're going to talk about some of the big trends, some of the roadblocks you're going to run into, and a bit of survival advice to help you navigate some of the troubles ahead. Now, we know that customer experience has become the #1 priority for business and technology leaders. In fact, as you can see here, in our business technographics survey, we asked business leaders what their organization's top priorities are going to be over the next 12 months. And as you can see here, CX, improve the customer experience, came out on top. And that's over a lot of, if you look down the list there, some of the more usual suspects, things like reduce costs or differentiate in the market, or increase brand influence. Those might be the ones that traditionally you think would leap to mind, but nope. Improve the customer experience is right there on top. And because of this, and because of really the spread of the CX discipline throughout the business world, we really expect to see CX continue to gain momentum all across organizations, and not just among those people who think of themselves as quote-unquote customer experience professionals, right? And that's really going to drive four big trends. And what I'll tell you about each. I'll just mention each one of these four trends to start with, and then I'm going to dig into each one of those trends and offer you a few predictions within each one. But here are the really the big trends. First of all, legacy systems are going to continue, in fact, get even worse in some cases at inhibiting the CX transformations that everybody wants to make these days. A second, chief marketing officers' growing interest in the customer experience field is going to threaten to really overwhelm CX professionals. A third, cash-starved CX pros, right? They never have the budget that they need. They are going to find some relief with what I'm calling here lean CX methods, and of course I'll say more about those as we get to them. And finally, customer experience techniques are going to proliferate throughout the enterprise. Simply, what I mean here is that the tools and techniques that CX pros pioneered are going to spread around the places where you wouldn't traditionally think they are. And within this context here, it's not really going to be entirely smooth sailing as you might expect, because people who want to improve their company's customer experience are really going to be beset by some of the familiar problems, but in new and exciting ways. That said, so let me talk about here that first big trend: legacy systems inhibiting customer experience transformations. Right? And as I said, I'm going to talk about sort of sub predictions within each one of those trends. And here's the first one here. Companies will be limited to fixing what you might think of as stepping stones on the big customer journey. But the big point here is that for years companies have been making a lot of uncoordinated technology purchases, right? Call centers, marketing teams, product lines, they've all been buying different technology. And that's recognized as a problem, but that problem is really going to make itself known this year, because there are all these different sources of data, right? And that means that each one of these sources of data has a different view, only a partial view, of customers. And that's been a problem for CX pros for quite a long time. But in 2016, it's going to get even worse, because companies simply want to improve the customer experience more than ever and more broadly than ever. They're not really talking about incremental fixes anymore. They're talking about transformations. They have bigger plans. And when you get bigger plans, all these legacy system integration problems get even worse, right? And what used to be just a sort of speed bumps become real potholes, real problems. Right. Now we are going to see some glimmers of success. For instance, here I have a screenshot here of a Wells Fargo ATM screen. One of the things that Wells Fargo has been able to do is really put together a lot of its back-end systems to provide a better single view of the customer. And as a result, they've been able to do some interesting things, like, as you can see here, customize ATM screens for individual customers. Wells Fargo knows, if you're one of their customers, the sort of transactions you usually make on ATMs. And so in this case, as you can see, this particular customer, usually what they do is they usually just take $60 out of their family checking account. So they get that button right up there on the top, right? Whereas if somebody, usually say gets $100 out of a line of credit, they'd have a different button there, right? This is something that sounds relatively simple, but those of you who try to do these sorts of things across the whole customer life cycle know the massive back-end data integration problems that go into doing something so relatively simple. But short of really just rebuilding their whole technology stacks, companies aren't going to be unifying the end-to-end customer journey and improving the end-to-end customer journey anytime soon. Right? Even in this case, Wells Fargo isn't doing it end-to-end. It's just one point. It's just the ATMs. The rest of the experience remains the same. Right? By the way, you might be thinking, oh, well, startups can do this. Startups do this easily. Well, that's what they might want you to think. But you take, for instance, Uber can experiment, with Spotify like it did last year, through access to APIs and things like that. But just because data integration is easy doesn't mean that companies are actually going to make the right decisions with it and create experiences that customers actually want or need. More isn't necessarily better. Right? So that's the first trend here. Companies, because of these data integration problems, companies are going to be limited to just stepping stones rather than fixing the whole, really transforming the whole customer journey like they say they want to. Second, CX high points are going to accentuate the holes in the experience. what I'm talking about here is, I said a couple minutes ago that you are going to see some glimmers of hope. Some successes on these stepping stones, but that means that's going to make the same old customer experiences that those companies deliver elsewhere in the customer lifecycle look even worse by comparison. So, for instance, Aloft Hotels, right? They've got these robot butlers in some of them now, which is a sort of whiz-bang fancy thing, right? Oh, I forgot my toothbrush, and you call downstairs to the desk, and instead of a person bringing it up to you, a robot brings it up to you. Woo, exciting! That's just one little thing, but the rest of the hotel experience is going to be the same, right? Anybody who travels quite a bit for work, sometimes it can be a real pain to say get an emailed copy of your final bill, or something like that. So you're gonna see the juxtaposition of these whiz-bang, exciting, robot butler-esque sort of experiences juxtaposed with, it took 2 phone calls and 3 emails to get an uneditable PDF version of my bill, just like it was like 1985, right? Or for instance, there's another example here, Air Canada. Air Canada recently rolled out a great new mobile app. Looks really good. As far as UX design and everything goes, hey, great stuff, and you can make reservations on it and all that. But unfortunately, in their rush to put out a new mobile app, right, to fix that stepping stone, they didn't take the time to integrate it with existing digital touchpoints. So you can book flights on the mobile app, but if you book the flight anywhere else from their website or from a tablet app or from if you called into a call center, you made a reservation elsewhere, you can't access that from the mobile app. They didn't do the back-end integration necessary to put it all together. Right? And so that's another example here. Ooh, wow, this mobile app looks really exciting. That's great. One high point, but the rest of the experience is just the same old problematic thing that it always was. It looks that much worse by comparison, right? And we're going to see a lot more of that as companies really race to enhance their front-end digital experiences to kind of keep up with the Joneses in the industry. It's just going to make the back-end technology picture look even more complicated. Right? So that's the sort of second trend here within this category. Let's talk about the next category, big category of trends here. CMOs, right? We're going to have growing interest in customer experience, and that's going to threaten to overwhelm CX pros. What I'm talking about here, just to sort of frame the issue, is that the split between CX and marketing has really widened in recent years. CX initially sort of grew up as a minor appendage of marketing, but it grew into its own independent business function, and marketing has really started focusing in the last years even more just specifically on the acquisition phases of the customer life cycle, whereas CX has tended to focus on the whole customer life cycle, things like retention and getting service and things like that. And so they've really gone in 2 separate directions. And the problem here is that unfortunately, as a result, oftentimes you find cases in which marketing promises one experience while the CX team works with the rest of the company to deliver a very different experience. Right? One of my favorite examples here is from a car company back in 2015. The car company made a big pivot and everything, and the marketing department really rolled out this whole campaign about passion over precision. We make exciting cars that people love to drive, but the car dealer experience is the same bland old thing that it always was. And the people who actually engineered and built the cars built cars that are really, really finely made, but so the car reviewers say, no fun to drive. Right? So a total disjuncture here between what these different parts of the organization are doing. And CMOs, to their credit, recognize that this is a problem. They know that brand and marketing and CX and products all have to align. And so a lot of very well-meaning CMOs are really going to seek to really assert their authority to lead enterprise-wide CX efforts to try to get everybody on the same page. I've got a good quote here from a very prominent CMO at Salesforce. Right? The quote says here, the new CMO is about owning the customer experience. Right? And that's the trend we see with a lot of CMOs, is this attitude. Right? And I'm not criticizing them for that attitude. There's a lot of very good reasons for this here. But what that leads us to, for CX pros, a few particularly tricky trends to watch out for. First one here, CX pros are going to gain access to bigger budgets, but as I say, at a price. We did a survey, and we found that in 2015, budget shortfalls plagued 52% of CX pros. Right? And basically, that's CX pros. 52% of CX pros saying, "I do not have the money to get done what I need to get done, not even what I wish to get done or what I hope to get done, just to actually keep the lights on, as it were." Right? Over half don't have the money for it. Whereas in contrast, marketing budgets grew at about 8% last year. Right? But what's going to happen here is that CMOs are going to go to their CX teams and say, "I will give you money to do what you need to do." But as I say, that money comes at a price. And the price is, rather than focusing on the whole customer life cycle, there's just a visualization of the customer life cycle I have here. It starts with discover, explore, buy. You're probably familiar with the general notion here. Instead of focusing on the whole customer life cycle, CMOs are going to ask their CX teams to instead just focus on the parts of the customer life cycle that are important to marketing. That means things like the discover and explore, and maybe the buy phases. Right? But really it means that CX pros, in return for that windfall from marketing, are going to have to just focus on what's important to marketing. Right? And that means that CX pros are going to not only focus on that, but they're actually going to have to retool the way they do things to move key performance indicators that marketers care about. Right? Customer acquisition, customer engagement, things like that. So they're really going to have to narrow down what they do and ignore the rest. So that's the first big trend here, bigger budgets but at a price. Second trend here, marketing is going to threaten to dominate the whole CX discussion. What I'm talking about here is perhaps a bigger issue, which is that, again, with their enormous budgets, but also their large staff, their prominence on executive committees, really, CMOs can easily overwhelm the voices of even C-suite level chief customer officers. Right? Chief customer officers would sort of be the CX head, right? Basically, I'm just saying here, that even in cases in which the person who runs marketing and the person who runs CX are technically of equal rank, the CMO totally can dominate that discussion, easily overwhelm them. Right? And this is going to become routine because in 2016, this year, as CMOs are really seeking to drive those CX discussions at higher levels, they're going to be doing it from their own perspectives. Right? And again, this is sort of a good news, bad news story, right? Because you've got the customer life cycle there. And again, CX pros talk about customer experience as a field that focuses on the whole life cycle. Because that's what the field was intended initially to do. But when CMOs talk about CX, right? Again, they're saying no, we're really focused. What CX is really about is things like brand, marketing, personalized advertising, right? And so when CMOs start talking about CX at the executive level, in many cases that's going to be the first time that people at that level are really hearing, about the customer experience field, and they're going to be learning about the field as marketers see it, which is things like personalized advertising, rather than as CX pros see the CX field, which is a more life cycle oriented thing. And so the very sort of definition, the way CX is talked about and conceived of and budgeted for and planned for and enacted at those higher levels is really going to focus around the CMO's perspectives. The third trend here, some CX pros are going to let themselves get absorbed, or in some cases reabsorbed, right, by marketing. And this is simply because, I mean, I'm not blaming them for it. They're going to be excited about the promise of the CMO support, because so many CX pros find themselves not only strapped for cash, but also sort of ignored, by the parts of the organization that they're trying to help. And so they're going to say, hey, the CMO actually wants to do something here. I'm on board. Yes, it means I'm going to have to just focus on part of the experience, the sort of acquisition phases of the experience rather than the whole life cycle, but hey, at least I get to do, I get to accomplish something big somewhere here. And so CX pros in some cases are going to happily follow the CMO's lead, and they're going to concentrate on brand affinity, marketing funnels, things like that. And in those cases, CX pros are even going to actually sort of supplant their focus on a lot of the kind of tried and true CX metrics, right? And instead, focus on CMO-friendly metrics like brand recognition, for instance, right? Which is something that CX pros don't normally care about, but marketers, of course, do care about. And as a result, and you can see I've got that same data set up there from earlier. As a result, we're actually going to see that efforts to unify things are sort of going to go backwards, because marketing is going to get better than ever at promising experiences that customers want. But without the CX pros focusing on improving the experience across the whole life cycle, some companies are actually going to get worse at delivering the experience that marketing is getting better at promising, right? Because what's actually going to happen here is, instead of that improving CX pros are actually going to end up working on things like increasing brand influence, right? Which is not improving the end-to-end customer experience, right? And because that was a sort of a tricky message to deliver, let me just say it one more time. A lot of cases when CX pros go ahead and follow the marketer's lead and just focus on what's important to marketing, it means that some companies are going to get better at promising an experience that customers want. But without CX pros working on the whole life cycle, those companies are actually going to get worse at delivering on those promises. Nobody wants that. Now, the fourth trend here, the predicted decline of CMOs is going to fail to materialize. This is an interesting one. What happened, last year, about the middle of last year, this big UK retailer called John Lewis, I've just got a screenshot of a John Lewis store there, they eliminated their chief marketing officer, got rid of the position, and instead created a new chief customer officer, whose job it was to lead both marketing and customer experience enterprise-wide. And as a result, some of the marketing trade publications freaked out and said, this is the end of the chief marketing officer. It's all customer experience from here on out. Not so fast, everybody. Don't count on this happening, because at the same time as John Lewis got rid of its chief marketing officer in favor of a life cycle-wide chief customer officer, we had companies like GoDaddy separating CX and marketing into two separate functions. They appointed a new CMO, so they kept their CMO, but whereas CX had previously been under the marketing organization, they pulled it out and created a chief customer officer who's co-equal with the CMO. Right? And then, on the other hand, you have companies like Electrolux that actually reintegrated a lot of CX functions that had drifted away from marketing back under the CMO, thus putting the CMO in charge of CX again. Right? So companies are going to continue experimenting with a lot of different ways of governing, and a lot of different ways of forming the relationship between the marketing and the CX functions. The demise of the CMO is not even nearly at hand. And the fourth big trend, cash-starved CX, third big trend, cash-starved CX pros are going to find some relief from their budget woes with what I'm calling lean CX methods here. Let's talk about the first trend here. Lean customer research will take hold. at Forrester, we talk a lot about the importance of deep qualitative observational research, things like ethnography and journaling studies and things like that. And we talk about them a lot because they're super important. Unfortunately, only 16%, that's 16% of companies do this kind of stuff because it's expensive and it takes a while. And so companies are looking for faster, cheaper alternatives to this kind of qualitative customer research. And so what we're starting to see is we're starting to see some companies providing that sort of thing or building it themselves. And so one aspect of this is online customer panels. I just got a screenshot here of SGI. This is Saskatchewan Government Insurance, a big Canadian government-owned insurance corporation, and they started using online customer panels, like several other companies. And of course, a lot of you might recognize that actually online customer panels is a tool that CX is starting to borrow from marketing. Right, so this is coming over into the CX space from marketing, and it's becoming popular because it's a lot faster and a lot cheaper than identifying customers, sort of hand-picking customers, and then flying them all out to a resort for 2 weeks. At the end of the fiscal year, and talking to them and wining them and dining them and all that. This is a lot faster. It's cheaper. It's near real time. You put questions out there. Hey, what does everybody think this week about this sort of thing or that sort of thing? And just kind of keep the conversation going. And so it's I'm calling it lean customer research because it's faster. It's iterative, right? It's even agile, capital A, agile. Versus what you might call it a sort of traditional, from the software world, waterfall customer research approach. Once a year we're going to do a thing. Now it's quick. Every couple of weeks, every month. Keep this thing going. So that's the one of these ideas here of what we're calling lean customer research. Another aspect of this here, crowdsourcing, right? Crowdsourcing is really starting to intensify. Really as a result of just intensified competition for customer experiences, and coupled with customers really rapidly rising expectations and the necessity for compressed cycle times. Right? You can't take a year or even sometimes 6 months to roll out experience innovations anymore. You gotta keep them coming. And crowdsourcing is a great way to come up with just a volume of ideas and to vet them in near real time, right? With actual customers. One of the best examples here, I've just got a screenshot here of my Starbucks idea. This is a website for Starbucks where customers can go and they can propose ideas, and people can comment on them and vote on them right away. You can see over here on the left side of the screen, there's product ideas, and below that are experience ideas. As of this screenshot, I took this screenshot a few weeks ago now, 12,245 ideas for experience changes in ordering, payment, and pickup. 23,000 for atmosphere, 15,000 for other things, right? Huge volumes of experience ideas, very quick, and they're, as I said, they're voted on and they're commented on and they're vetted really fast. If you think that this is just for, if you think this is for trendy companies or something like that, oh, my company's too entrenched or too conservative for that sort of idea, even the TSA, right, Transportation Security Administration, the airport security people, not generally known as one of the most cutting-edge, innovative, agile organizations in the world, even they're using things like crowdsourcing and challenges now. In fact, by the end of this year, they're going to be rolling out a new design for their pre-check lines, right? Those of you who travel a lot for work probably make use of TSA pre-check, and you probably love it. But it's going to get even better because they're redesigning the customer flow through the pre-check lines. Did they take 3 years and hire an outside consultancy to do it? Nope. They spent $15,000 on a challenge. They put it out there. They got a huge volume of ideas. They awarded, I think, $5,000 prizes, all in, and have their new pre-check line idea, all within the space of like 2 months, less than that even, I think 6 weeks. Right? That's the trend here. crowdsourcing is very powerful. Third trend here, new CX measurement tools to supplement surveys. And here's the thing, right? Surveys are essential, and they're going to be essential forever. If you're not doing surveys, just turn off the lights and go home, because you're going to fail. Yet what we see is technology is giving companies the opportunity to do things like social media listening with plain language analytics. So you get things like this. This is just a company called Infigi. This is just one I happened to grab. There are plenty of other ones out there. And it does things like listens to people's comments on Twitter, and then because it has some plain language processing capabilities, can actually understand what they're talking about and provide a sort of near real-time dashboard for what the conversation is going on out there. Right? Just ideas for sort of new measurement tools that are coming along as well, just to kind of add to your fundamental toolkit. And finally, here the fourth trend, CX techniques are going to proliferate throughout the enterprise. What I'm talking about here is simply that CX pros have proven the power of their tools and techniques. Right? So what we find is that other business functions like, say, human resources and public relations are coming to CX teams and asking for their help, or using these techniques on their own. Or you find things like when General Motors had a big car recall last year, the year before last, that recall was actually designed and led by its chief customer officer. Right? So the power of these CX tools and techniques is really getting to be known and spreading throughout the organization. Another good example is we've really seen a trend. My colleagues at Forrester and I have seen a trend with human resources departments using customer journey mapping, which is, of course, a core CX technique to map not customer journeys but employee journeys, right, to help improve the employee experience. So that's this idea of this spread of techniques. And so we're going to see a few trends within this context. First of all, CX teams are going to get very, very busy, because with all these other business functions, even HR, product development, requesting training or workshops or long-term partnerships with the CX team, CX teams are just going to be inundated with requests for help. And this means that really the CX teams that are best positioned to survive this deluge are the ones that have trained others with core CX skills, and so they can sort of distribute the extra work. That means things like CX champions programs. I've just got a screenshot here. I'll describe it because I see it's taking a minute to build on some of your screens. This is the Caterpillar Corporation's CX Champions program. Right, that Champions program is simply when, as I alluded to a moment ago, the core CX team trains people throughout the organization on these basic CX skills. And then they go back to their jobs and they can use those skills wherever they happen to sit, whatever they happen to be working on. And so, when your CX team distributes those skills throughout the organization, it means that rather than just getting buried under an avalanche of requests for help, you can send those requests back out, or even better, those requests may never even make it to you, because when some product team or some network engineering team or something somewhere says, hey, let's talk to the CX team, somebody can raise their hand and say, hey, I'm on the CX Champions program, and I can help you out right now. No need to bother those guys. So that's important thing I think that a lot of CX teams are going to have to do if they haven't already. And of course, for the ones that haven't done it, they're really going to be faced with three unwelcome options. First of all, work huge amounts of overtime. Second, beg for budget from somewhere, maybe CMOs. And third, prioritize the requests and leave some colleagues to seek help from outside consultancies, which might seem fine, except that those outside consultancies' practices might not align with what the CX team is trying to do throughout the organization. And you might end up with something really disjointed when you start bringing in sort of patchwork of outside vendors in an uncoordinated way. This leads me to my second trend here. Smart CX and design agencies are going to seize these new business opportunities. Again, human resources, public relations, product lines, right? They're all starting to use CX design methods. And when they're going to start doing this, they're going to find that more and more their usual go-to consultancies just don't have the skills to help. And so they're going to start seeking out CX and design firms. And so smart firms are going to seize on that early and build solutions tailored to the sorts of business units that don't usually approach them. One company, and there's some others, it's just one I happen to grab, IDEO. A lot of you probably know IDEO is a big design firm, but they created this thing called IDEO University, which is a branch of IDEO which is specifically focused on teaching CX-related design methods, human-centered design and things like that, to people who are not customer experience professionals. Right? They're positioning themselves to grab a lot of that work from human resources and the public relations and the IT department and those folks that are going to be seeking design help where they weren't before. Third, a litter of new CX techniques are going to leave pros scrambling to herd cats. What I'm talking about here is just simply that as these CX skills get seeded throughout the organization, these different business units are going to make them their own. They're going to adapt them, right? They're going to create hybrids with sort of native tools and techniques, and they're going to take basic things here like a standard 5-step design thinking process, and they're going to make them their own. And that's a double-edged sword, right? Because on the one hand, it means that a lot of great new techniques to improve the customer experience are going to evolve. And so CX pros are going to be on the lookout for those. They're going to need to identify these new tools and techniques that are really great and learn them, master them, perfect them, and then use them and teach them, right, to kind of keep the whole CX field evolving with the latest and greatest. Unfortunately, it also means that some of these teams that start out using CX tools and techniques are going to end up using the wrong tool for the job. Right? Those of us who work in CX see this a lot. You teach a group a CX technique. They come back 6 months later and they say, "Hey, we used your awesome CX technique to do this thing." And you look at it and you say, "Wow, it might have started out as a CX technique, but it definitely went somewhere else." Like, for instance, one of the classics, some of you might have encountered this, customer journey mapping, right, which maps the journey from the customer's perspective, oftentimes ends up sort of degrading into just a list of company-owned touch points, which is something very, very different from a customer journey map, right? And in those sorts of cases, teams that think they're using CX techniques, but they're not anymore, are going to end up coming to the wrong conclusions and making wrong decisions and making bad designs. And this is going to hurt businesses, and it's going to give the CX field a bad name. So CX pros are going to have to keep an eye out for those things too, those tools and techniques gone awry. And they're going to need to get back in there, and they're going to need to do some gentle retraining and kind of helping out, get people back on track, so that those teams don't end up regretting what they're trying to do. So, just to recap here are those 4 major trends again. Started out by talking about all the problems that are going to come with legacy systems as more and more companies this year really try to push on those big CX transformations. As I said, those what used to be just sort of speed bumps are going to become huge potholes or even major roadblocks. And then, second big trend, CMOs' growing interest is going to threaten to overwhelm CX pros. This is a big theme there, was that in a lot of cases, a lot of companies are going to end up focusing their customer experience efforts just on what's important to marketers. And that could actually backfire because as marketing gets better at promising, the rest of the company is going to get worse on delivering. Third, cash-starved CX pros are going to find some relief from their budget problems with what I call lean methods. Right? This was the challenges and the feedback and some of the other analytics and things like that about the online panels. And fourth, CX techniques proliferating throughout the enterprise, which I just covered. So there's an awful lot there, a lot going on this year. It's going to be a big year for CX, and I'm really excited to see see how it all plays out. This is a really exciting year for the customer experience field.
Thanks, Rick, for that great presentation. I really appreciate that.